All right, everybody, welcome back into the Auburn Live Basketball Show. Appreciate you for joining us. As always, I'm Justin Hokanson. With me, Alan Head. What's up? How are we doing?
I'm doing good, man. How about you, buddy?
Good, man. I wrote in my brief thoughts and grades that you can find at auburnlive.com, and I posted on the board Saturday night. I was like, I don't know if you could write a better script for a day. If you're an Auburn basketball fan, I don't know how you write a national title. But,
Yeah.
Outside of that, like Saturday was you win a championship, you break a rup streak, you beat a team like Kentucky like a rented mule in their own place, and then you win the championship outright by Alabama losing at the buzzer to their rival Tennessee, which I don't know. How do you write that any differently? Like, could you be any more happy if you're an Auburn basketball fan?
Probably not. Just a very picturesque day, but one of many benchmarks that Bruce Pearl wanted to accomplish this team. You and I talked at the very beginning of the season about how this was an all-in year.
Mm-hmm.
And this was phase one of all-in year, win the SEC championship. But to do it, to your point, in the way that it was done, in Rupp Arena, you get the proverbial gorilla off your back. You know what I mean? You beat a ranked team that way. You watch your rival lose to another rival on a buzzer beater. Fantastic day. Fantastic day if you're an Auburn fan.
All right, we're going to talk about Kentucky, and we're going to look ahead to Texas A&M real quick. Shout out to our sponsor. You see it right there up in the corner, over the corner. Session Cocktail. It's a mirrored thing. Session Cocktail, downtown Auburn, right there on Magnolia Avenue. Go check them out. 4 to 7 happy hours. Open on the weekends, Sundays 12 to 5. Go pop in before or after dinner. It's an awesome place. Great old fashioned. A great drink called the Monkey Business, which right now is kind of my drink when I go there. It's really good. But go check them out. Awesome people, friends of the show, and friends of auburnlive.com. Session Cocktail right there on Magnolia Avenue in downtown Auburn, Alabama. All right. Kentucky 94-78. Auburn wins. Really interesting game. Defensively phenomenal stuff from Auburn. Kentucky was held to a season low in threes made. That was 4. A season low in 3 attempts. That was 17. They like to shoot 30 or more a game. A season high in turnovers, 18. The second highest turnover rate of the season, behind the Vanderbilt game for Kentucky, which was a loss. So you did multiple. You held them in 3 different areas. They were season worsts for Kentucky, an offense that can move and run and shoot and score. And Auburn just completely shut them down. You hold them to 78 points. 28 of those came from the free throw line. So Auburn fouled a little bit, got called for some fouls, hacked a little bit, whatever. But I think part of that was just how aggressive they were being in chasing them off the line, and it forced Kentucky to drive a little bit more. And so I'm sure that the coaching staff's not going to be thrilled about the amount of fouls and sending them to the line. But the point is 28 of their 78 points came from the line. So, man, you really start to think about how Auburn defended on the perimeter and defended the shots. Just exceptional. Maybe the best defensive game they've played all season. I don't know. Tennessee was good, but Tennessee didn't have the firepower that Kentucky does, and that was in Neville. Some of those games in Maui, North Carolina, Memphis were really good defensive efforts. But, again, this was on the road against the top 10 offense. So I'm not sure there's been a better defensive performance, and you did that when Denver Jones only played 8 minutes. So that was kind of the storyline for me, was the defense. Obviously, the 3 guards for Auburn went off. The reason I say it was an interesting game for me is Janai Broom only scores 9 points. Auburn got out-rebounded by 15. They only had 8 assists on 29 field goals. If I told you that going in, if I said Auburn's going to be out-rebounded by 15, they're only going to have 8 assists on 29 made field goals, which is absolutely way below their rate. They're going to give up 16 second chance points. Janai Broom's going to score 9 points and get 6 rebounds. You'd be like, ooh, sounds like trouble. But it was anything but when you get 70-plus points from Todd Pettiford, Chad Baker-Mazara, and Miles Kelly.
When this season started, there was some some criticism by some parts of the Auburn sphere about Bruce not necessarily replacing Jalen Williams and some of the production that he brought to the table from that 4 position. The thought going in was an addition like Miles Kelly would offset that. And yesterday, if that was true, that was on full display for everybody to see. Just a fantastic game from him. Chad Baker-Mazara was dialed in a way that if he plays this way moving into the tournament, I don't know that Auburn can be beat. And that's on a night. Like, this is a top 25 team. Janai Broom goes for 9 points and 5 rebounds, 6 rebounds?
Yeah, 5 or 6 rebounds. And I wrote it was Janai Broom. I thought this was crazy. Janai Broom's played 159 career games. That's a lot. Only 14 times has he scored like 3 points or less. So I mean,
Right.
and then only 19 times has he taken I think he took 9 shots or something like that. Like, so what you saw from Janai, 160 career games is beyond unusual. I mean, that's just rarely happened.
Sure.
And it didn't matter.
It didn't matter, right? They still won by 15 points against a top 25 team on the road. That's how good and deep this team is. And if anybody had any question about the team around, this is not just Janai Broom. This is a team that is capable of winning a national championship. And you saw that with obviously Miles's efforts. We talked about Chad, Tahad Pettiford, a guy you and I talked in the last podcast about how he wasn't seeing it very well and how he hadn't been shooting it very well. Well, he got out of a slump in a big way to go for 20-plus points, 4 assists, and 0 turnovers. And in a season high in minutes, in 33 minutes, for a freshman in Rupp Arena.
No
a
turnovers.
place, even on the TV copy that I'm watching, like when the TV copy worked, right? We'll talk about that later. But that you could hear the crowds and how loud it would get. And it didn't seem to affect this team at all. They just continued to play and grind and extend leads. And again, on a night where Kentucky didn't do anything special against Janai, he just had an off night. And that's going to happen even for superstars, right? They didn't double. They didn't do anything drastically different on defense. And Kentucky's not a defensive juggernaut anyway. Their game is on offense. We talked about that before. But he had an off night, and everybody around him picked it up. And it was really great basketball to watch, fantastic shooting effort. And it just proves that this is a championship caliber team. They now have a conference championship. And that's one of 3 that Bruce has won during his time at Auburn. And I think I posted this on the board before, but in Auburn's history as a program, they have 5 SEC conference championships. Bruce owns 3 of those. They have 3 SEC tournament championships. Bruce owns 2 of those. And they have 1 Final Four. Bruce obviously was the coach for that run. To see where they were at the end of the Jeff Lebo / Tony Barbie era to where they are now as a program, it's mind-blowing. And again, this is step 1 for what Bruce wanted to accomplish this year. But hat tip to him for being able to get the SEC championship in the fashion that you did with the record that you have now, 15-1 in conference play, and an opportunity to earn the most SEC wins ever for, I think, a program in the SEC and definitely for Auburn.
I'd have to go back and look. I don't know. I don't know what the best 18 game. Well, I mean, you haven't. Well, what have you had? Was it 16? Did it just move to 18 with Oklahoma and Texas, or was it 18 last year? No, it was 18 last year. They had 13-5.
Right.
My phone on the floor. So I guess is that right? So it's been 18. Yeah, because they were 11-7, so it's been at 18. I don't know what the best 18 is. I have to go back and look. I mean, Kentucky, right? Kentucky was undefeated one year.
Oh, that's
and
right.
then lost to Wisconsin, so they went 18-0.
That's right. That's right.
But I'd be curious to know how many, if there's any 17-1s or 16-2s. Not many. I mean, there can't be, but a couple. Before we get into that, just real quick on Broom. I mean, like, yeah, he had an off night. I mean, he even missed some free throws. One of his a couple of his 3-point attempts were not close. know, like it just sometimes meant he's not Superman. Like
Yeah.
he's been so productive every single time. But I do think, it exposes the one thing, which is I think if you go back and look, Colin Murray Boyles is an athletic big guy.
Yeah.
Florida's got athletic big guys. Amari Williams is athletic. There is a little bit of, if you've got the right guy or two, you can bother Janai. He's not going to go up over you. He's not 7 feet tall. Um, and so if you've got the right guy that's both athletic and can get off the floor quicker than Janai, you can cause him issues. His strengths are, figuring out how to get a shot off. He's got great touch. But with the right person, you can disrupt him a little bit. Thought Amari Williams did a really good job. Amari Williams had a better game than Janai Broom. But it's okay because what it just shows is that Auburn can still win without him. Now, you don't want to test that too often, but for a game, Auburn can withstand Janai having. I mean, Janai was really a non-factor. I mean, he really was. There wasn't even a stretch where he went bucket, 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 or something like that. He was just. But I think he's still the most valuable player on the team because he's a presence. You have to worry about him. You can still dump it to him and he can kick out. He just still opens everything up that if you didn't have him, nothing else would work. So he's still the most valuable player in that regard, even when he's has a low production game the way he did. Chaney had 1 for 3. Like Chaney had one of the worst games he's had in 2 months. Didn't matter. Like Dylan Cardwell, foul trouble, didn't really contribute at all. Defended fairly well on that end a little bit, but didn't really grab offensive boards or like nothing. It was just 3 guards that went off. And I wrote about it. It kind of reminded me, honestly, it reminded me of a couple of guards against Kentucky a few years ago when Jared Harper and Bryce Brown went off in that Elite 8 game. Same sort of thing to me. Those 2 guys owned that game. I think they combined for 50 points in that game to go to the Final Four. This is like that. It was just Auburn guards that took over. Miles hit a career high 9 threes. So you had Miles hitting a career high 9 threes. You had Tahad playing a career high in minutes. You had Chad hitting 22 points again. So 2 of Chad's 4 highest scoring career games have come in the last 5 days. 22 against Ole Miss, 22 against Kentucky. So just marvelous performances from those guys. No turnovers from Tahad. And then the way they – but again, like I keep going back to the way they play defense. They're so efficient offensively. But, man, if they play defense like that, they were so – watching them switch screens, watching them switch against Kentucky was artwork, was a thing of beauty. Go back and watch that game and watch how they are passing guys off and communicating and, like, there'll be a down screen and he'll just let him go. They literally knew Kentucky's game. They knew where they were going before Kentucky even went there. Mm-hmm. I mean, Kentucky guy would make a cut and the Auburn defender would take 2 steps and just be like, you can go ahead because I know you're going there and my guy's going to get you. And then there's going to be a guy come over here. I'm going to pick him up. And so I'm just going to wait on him. And I would watch Kentucky make cuts sometimes and they're just cutting right into Auburn defenders all night. And Auburn's just like, yeah, we know where you're going at all times. It was incredible. So you win a championship, like you said about, all that stuff around Bruce. So you got 15 SEC wins, 16 would be the Auburn record. They're at 27 overall wins. 28 would be a new Auburn record. This team already tied the Jabari Walker team. So one more win gets you the most regular season wins in the history of the program. It gets you the most SEC wins in one season in the history of the program. It would get you to 17 quad 1 wins, which would tie a Division I record with Kansas. They're already at the SEC record for quad 1 wins. It would also, one more win, would get you 11 ranked wins before conference tournament, which would tie the Kentucky team from 2002, 2003 at 11 with the most ranked wins before a conference tournament. Like, in heaven, I mean, if they won them both, then they beat all those. They set single season records for wins, for SEC wins, for quad 1 wins, and for most ranked wins before the conference tournament, both Auburn and just like the history of in Division I history. on top of, what should be the national coach of the year, Janai Broom, who will be one, either the player of the year or the runner up. We'll see. I mean, so I wrote it today. I'm like, we haven't really talked about it. I'm like, I don't know if we were already there definitively, but we are now. It's the greatest regular season in the history of Auburn basketball. I assume we were probably already there. Maybe you could say Jabari and Walker, because at the time they still had those two records. Maybe the Chris Porter year, just, I don't know, the way that season went, and it had been so long, maybe that was a special season. But and they reached, well, I don't know how they reached 2. Jabari team reached 1. Now we're there. This is the greatest regular season in the history of Auburn basketball. And just take a step back. I know everybody, I saw some people on the board talking about Final Four bust and Natty or bust. Man, if that's the way you want to go about it, by all means, go for it. But I think that's crazy, and it's wholly unfair to the team and the staff if the expectation is, okay, fine, great, another regular season championship, but win a title and come talk to me, or get to the Final Four and come talk to me. That cannot be your mindset. College basketball is not football. It's not get to the Final Four in the playoff or else. Like, it is so freaking hard to make the tournament, to make a run, to win 6 games. Basketball's a different thing. Just to go out there and win a basketball game, to have your shot go in every night. Like, it's just difficult. And so yes, this team needs to make a run. No question about it. Especially after Yale, this team has to make a run. I would be okay if you said they cannot do any worse than making it to the Elite. I'm not going to put Final Four. I think you can make the argument. I wouldn't be mad at you, but I would say Elite 8. I'd be like, at worst case, they're playing to go to the Final Four. That's what this team needs to be. I don't know that I'd go worst case they're in the Final Four. Again, depends on matchups. And there's just stuff. But sort of discounting the season and going, well, we've won a championship before. Like, win a championship, or win a Final Four. I don't love that. I mean, again, greatest regular season in the history of Auburn basketball. Bruce ain't gonna be the coach forever.
No,
I mean, and if it's Stephen Pearl or somebody else, I'm not saying they can't replicate some of it, but what you're going through now is just doesn't come around. Look around the SEC. Nobody else has accomplished what Auburn has in the last 8 years, right? I don't know that. Does anybody else have 3 regular season titles in the last 8? Bama's got 2. And 2 tournament titles. What's crazy is if you take out COVID, the Samir Okoro that finished as a 2 seed, and was playing good basketball, they didn't have the opportunity to win the tournament. They didn't win the regular season, but they didn't have the opportunity to win the tournament. If you took them out and said, of the last 7 Bruce Pearl teams that had a chance to either win the regular season or the tournament, they had a chance to win them both. Of the 7 teams that had a chance to win them both, 5 of those 7 have done one or the other.
Just an incredible coaching job, Justin. And to your point, if we as a fan base have gotten to the point where we say an SEC title doesn't mean anything, my God, how far have we come?
Yeah. If that's your stance, then you also don't get to complain about rotations ever.
No,
because if you're like Natty or bust, but also why are we playing so many guys? Like, okay, now you pick and choose. Now, if you're going to complain about something that big, then you can't talk about me like Bruce plays too many people.
No, it is a quantum leap. Again, I make the joke routinely because it's true. I can remember when you could find tickets in the trash can at the end of the Tony Barbie era.
Ooh.
That you could pick up and get into a game for. I can remember Cavaniss, Beard Eves, memorial.
Mm-hmm.
And even at the end of Cliff's era, right? Like, Cliff had a really good run there for a little bit. And then after everything kind of went sideways with Marco and a couple other players, that last season for him, it felt like the air had kind of come out of the balloon some. And the fans had stopped kind of supporting it in the way that they had during the middle of that 1999 year and even carrying over to the next season. But this run that Bruce has been on is truly special. And that's why I kind of laid out all those credentials of what he's accumulated to this point in this run. And you're right. He's not going to be the head coach for forever. What is being done right now Yes, sure, it can be replicated, but it's not a guarantee. Look at the, you know what I mean? Look at the dip Florida had between the end of the Billy Donovan era and now getting back to where Todd Golden's getting that program back to where they were. Think about the, early 90s runs that Dale Brown had with Shaquille O'Neal and that group at LSU, and have they been anywhere close to that since then? The Arkansas team, maybe John Calipari turns it around, but I can remember when Arkansas won a national championship under Nolan Richardson, and then they were just kind of an afterthought, more or less, there for a long time. Made some bad coaching hires. That's what happens in programs. So understanding that you have a fantastic coach, one of the absolute best in a deep conference littered with talented coaches, and you have put together the regular season that you just have, which, as you talked about, you can argue is the greatest regular season in SEC history. It certainly is the greatest history in Auburn, regular season in Auburn history. Maybe the only one, in my honest opinion, that probably can rival that is Chris Porter in the 99 season. That was a special group. Bryant Robinson, fantastic. Mamadou Njai, Doc Robinson, bunch of guys. But that's the only team, in my opinion, that even comes close to what they are achieving right now. And again, celebrate step one and what I know this team has bigger ambitions for, but understand the magnitude of the moment. This is the most talented SEC conference. This is, in my lifetime, I cannot remember a time that this conference was deeper or more talented, and Auburn is the regular season champion. That in and of itself stands alone to me as a moment of significance. And I hope that the fan base will recognize that, celebrate it for what it is. I'm not saying be content, okay? I'm just saying recognize it for what it is. Don't try to minimalize it because it is not a Final Four appearance or not a national championship. Again, you talked about it. The seeding matters. The venue you're playing in matters. There's just so much that goes into March Madness that people don't necessarily think of from a logistics standpoint that kind of alters who you're going to be playing, who's playing their best basketball. And even is a tournament the best way to declare a night, like who's the best team in college basketball? Probably not, because sometimes it can be who's the hottest.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Is that a true reflection of a body of work?
Well, I think a champion, maybe. I mean, if you look at so there's that streak, right, of Ken Pom. It's like the last 20 years, every champion's been top 20 in offense and top 30 in defense, something like that. So a champion, but everything else, no. There's all kinds of teams that pop up and make a Final Four run or an Elite Eight run. Then you're like, where'd they come from? So I think a champion probably will show itself to be one of Duke, Auburn, Houston, Florida, Tennessee, but probably one of those. But everything else, there's you got teams all over the place popping up and making runs, and really good teams, losing early that don't reflect what the season was, how good their season was.
Agreed. And so what if your draw somehow you have Houston as the 2 seed in your draw? Say that's what happens, and you lose to Houston in the Elite Eight. Is that going to change what this regular season was? To me, it doesn't. This is still a fantastic regular season. You just ran into a team that was probably equally as talented as you, that you'd already beat once, and it just didn't break your way. But again, you talk about the degree of difficulty of making it to the Final Four and winning a championship. It is not easy.
Yeah.
It is not easy at all. When you're talking about a team like Houston that could be a 2 seed in your bracket, that's tough, man. That's really tough, and depending on where you're playing it.
Look at that Kentucky team. How do you think that Kentucky team, when whatever it was, 11 or 12, feels? Undefeated.
Yes.
And they lost in the championship game. I mean, they went 18-0, and then they won in the SEC tournament. You don't think they were going, okay, we're literally unbeatable.
Right.
And then they lost in the championship. So, yeah, and I think the other thing about this Auburn team is you gotta everything we've talked about is great. Quad 1 wins, the ranked wins, all that stuff. What it speaks to is I think, I mean, what it speaks to is the balance of the team being good offensively and defensively on both ends of the floor.
Yep.
There's only a few teams that can say they're really good on both ends. It speaks to the hard work they put in, their approach to every game. It certainly speaks to Bruce and the coaching staff. Like, there are no days off for them. It speaks to their ability to sort of get locked in and focus, and they've got sort of a lot of different weapons, all of that stuff. But don't forget, when you're thinking about this Auburn team and be like, oh, well, this team's got to win a national championship or I'm going to be disappointed or whatever. Just like, basketball is really close. Wins and losses are really close. They were down double digits to Houston. They won, but they easily could have lost that.
Mm-hmm.
Iowa State, they were down 18. Guys, I mean, Iowa State's really good. They end up winning that game, but don't forget that Iowa State was up 18 in that game. Auburn came back and won. Great. They lose to Duke, lose to Florida. South Carolina, you win by 2. That was a freaking nail biter. Georgia on the road, nail biter. I mean, Auburn, what makes them special is just the ability to win a bunch of those games. That does make them special. But it's not like they've just run roughshod over everybody. They've had plenty of close games, and some of the better teams they've played, Houston, Duke. I mean, Houston, Duke, and Florida are the 3 best teams they've played. They've lost to 2 of them. Now, they could beat Florida and they could beat Duke. They're as good as those teams. Those could go either way on a neutral floor. So, again, they're awesome, but there's just nothing about what they've done or what they're that guarantees anything in the tournament. But, man, they're a special group. Dylan, God, I didn't even mention Dylan Cardwell. I mean, win number 115. He becomes the all-time winningest player in the history of the program 1 year after Jalen Williams does it. And Bruce said, he goes, I don't think that'll be – he's probably right because I don't know that record's going to be broken. I mean, Cardwell's been there, 6 years? I mean, you got the COVID year. You got the extra year. Like, I don't know. In this day and age, I don't know how you're going to get a guy to be at a program for 5 or 6 years. I mean, it's just like – it's probably not going to happen. You're going to go pro. You're going to transfer out. Dylan is a very, very special person that loved being at Auburn, knew that, I think he recognized – who he was, his sort of abilities. He knew, and look, teams came after him. I sort of get my last couple of years confused, but 1,000% Georgia came after him within the last 2 portal cycles, and there were others. And he chose to stay, in part because he loves Auburn. He really, really does. In part because I think he knew his role with Auburn and Pearl. It was a good team and a good program. He could win. And I also think he didn't have this sort of skewed sense of who he was or who he could be. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Dylan Carl's not going to go be a 15-10. He's not that kind of scorer. He's really raw. He's athletic. He's big. He can defend really well. But like, he's not, you know what I mean? He could have said, I'm going to go somewhere and start and be like the man, but he doesn't have a great post-up game. That's not him. And so I think he sort of recognized, like, I am really good in my role here, and I'm helping win championships, and I'm at a place that I really love. And him holding that record could not be. It could have been somebody else. Like, it could have been somebody else that didn't play as much, that just was on the team for 5 years, that held the record. But Dylan was a contributor and is an incredible person in the community and is an incredible teammate and an incredible dude. And like, it quite literally, that's probably an underlooked part of Saturday, but it shouldn't be, man. Like, there's not, you couldn't, I wrote about this, and I sort of it made me think of Philip Lutzenkirchen. We didn't have Philip. He wasn't there for 5 years. And in Auburn, I guess he was on the 10 team, but 11 team wasn't very good. And he didn't have the run maybe of Cardwell did of the wins, but Philip Lutzenkirchen was loved in that way. Like, there was fans loved him, that was like they're everybody's favorite player. I don't know. Who would you equate Dylan to from the football side in terms of, contributor for an entire career, part of multiple championships, part of one of the best seasons they've ever had. Like, is there even an equivalent to him in Auburn athletics history?
Maybe Will Herring. That's the one that comes to mind.
Will was part of some good teams. But like, and part of it is Dylan is also in this social media age, and his exposure is through the roof. And so that's part, like if I thought about somebody like Carnell, that's, was widely beloved and was part of a championship team and played for was out in front of the public for 4 years, but nobody that was out in the community the way he is. And he's at, he's at student events and he's at FCA events and he's just like, he's volunteering in the community service. And, yeah, I don't know of, like, I really don't know of a.
No, because you try to think about teams. You're talking a delicate balance here of a guy that was out in the community and beloved in the way Dylan is, and then also played with competitive programs. And that's why I kind of gravitated towards Will, because you had the 04 season that was, undefeated. Probably they should claim a national championship at this point, even though they don't. You have the next year where I think they won 9 games, lost in a Capital One Bowl where they played lacklusterly. And then the next year they win 11 games again and beat Nebraska in a Cotton Bowl, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of string, maybe a Travis Williams, maybe a Trevon Reed.
But none of those guys, I don't think, hold a candle to the way Dylan Cardwell shows up somewhere. Look at him at the football game on the Jumbotron. Everybody's like, that's Dylan. He's great. He's amazing. He has the adoration of a truly, truly great player. But he's been here for 5 years and not just like 1 or 2. Whether it was maybe how people love Cam or how people love that's how they love Dylan. I'm not comparing him to Cam, but like the way people see Cam, I'm like, that's Cam. We're basically at that point with Dylan where if he's walking around campus or he's at whatever, people are like, that's Dylan Cardwell. He's great. We love him.
Because of who he is as a person as much as who he is as a basketball player. And I think that speaks volumes in this era that we're in the player compensation era, for a player to be as self-aware as he is. You talked about it before. There were teams that came after him, teams that offered nice incentive-laden NIL deals to him, opportunities to start to him. But to me, it came down to, you talked about his character, and it also came down to the fact that he trusted Bruce. And to his credit, before this year, and Bruce talked about that in the press conference this week, he promised Dylan that if he came back, that him and Janai would start together. And Bruce talked about, and I held true to my word, even though off season it was terrible. It was awful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it has worked out because of who they are as individuals. It has worked out because Dylan has been willing to sacrifice and to change his game and accept his role on this team for what he is and not try to be more than that. And in an era where you're trying to create content for yourself and value for yourself and branding for yourself and all those things, he's just said, I'm okay with who I am. I'm going to go out in the community, be the best person I can possibly be and the best ambassador of Auburn I can possibly be. And within the role that I am provided, I am going to give it 110% every night. And it's just rare. It is really rare to see that. And I hope that fans appreciate the fact that not only do you have Dylan in the way that he is, but you had a series of guys that were, Jalen Williams the year before, and other guys on this team, Denver, that has sacrificed parts of his game for the betterment of other people. He came in as a scorer, and he's converted himself into being a point guard.
Yeah.
Miles Kelly has not been the same. Like, he hasn't been counted on the same way that he was in Georgia Tech. He accepted a role to come in and move into a championship caliber program for the betterment of the team. And Miles got an opportunity to showcase his talent yesterday, and you saw him be rewarded for that. Now, I'll say all that to say he did something on the basketball court I don't think I've ever seen, and that is banked 2 3-point shots in from different sides of the court. He didn't call a damn either one of those two. By the way, okay. No. That was not intentional, but you know what? Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. He was both that night, and really happy for Miles that took place.
Yeah. I mean, so again, it was just a marvelous day performance from Auburn. I will say about 10 minutes before that game, I don't always have a good feeling on a game. I mean, sometimes I do, but sometimes I'm like, I'm not sure. About 10 minutes before that game started, I said to myself, it doesn't matter because nobody's gonna believe me, but I was like, yeah, I was like this. I was like, I feel like Auburn's about to run them. Jackson Robinson was out. That hurt them. He's one of their leading scorers. He's an excellent three-point shooter. I just, I thought Auburn was going to be really, really focused and dialed in, and they were. Now you go to A&M, which I think is going to be, here's another thing we get to learn about this team. It's another challenge. And if I'm Bruce Pearl, and Bruce is a plenty of good motivator, doesn't need my advice. But I think the challenge now is, do you say, great, you won the championship, all that stuff, great. Now, show me you can go undefeated on the road in the SEC. How about that?
Yeah.
How about, as good as this league is, you already won the championship. On top of that, how about going 9-0 on the road in this conference in a season? You know how hard it is to freaking win college basketball games on the road? And if this team goes to College Station and wins, they would go 9-0 in league play on the road. That's, to me, what you're telling this team. Now that's what we're playing for Saturday. We're playing for all this other stuff, but they're going to be a 1 seed. They probably got the number 1 overall seed locked up. Championships locked up. That's what you're playing. To me, that's what you say you're playing for. You're playing for a perfect road record in league play. Perfect. And just some pride that we're not the kind of team that wins a championship, does all that, and then just comes and it's like, we just won't lock in this game. They haven't been that way all year. I don't expect them to do it this time. But, there's that too. Just say, like, we're not going to be that team. So it's just about going out there and with some pride and playing like that. A&M obviously loses at Florida. They lost to Vanderbilt at home. They're kind of sputtering a little bit, but they're still plenty dangerous. They're good on the interior defensively. But I think Auburn matches up with them fairly well. If Auburn comes to play and is locked in, I still like Auburn's chances of going in there and winning. But they're really dangerous. And if you don't have Denver Jones against Wade Taylor, that could be an issue. Wade Taylor's really, really good. If you don't have Denver Jones, which we don't know his status other than it's nothing major, but does he practice Sunday? Does he practice Monday? Like, is he hampered to potentially where you don't play him? That would be an issue. That would be an X factor that now it's to hide against trying to defend Wade Taylor all game. But, JP Pegues might slide in there. I mean, if Denver's not in, you can't – Todd can't play 40 minutes at the point.
No.
I mean, Miles can bring the ball up the court. That's fine. But you could see JP probably getting some minutes if there's just no Denver at all. Give you enough to spell to Hod, maybe let Miles bring it up some, whatever you want to do to try to figure it out. But to me, that's what you're playing for Tuesday, that perfect 9-0 record on the road. Keep the momentum going. And you could certainly tell your team, hey, we don't have the number 1 locked up. We got to still be a 1 seed, even though I think they do. You could play into that a little bit. But yeah, it could be a grinded out game. I mean, I think it's just sort of another challenge for this team. How do you come back from, the same way trying to come down from beating Alabama? How do you come back from this and then go back on the road and show sort of your championship medal?
Yeah, no, I think a lot of what you say is very accurate, Justin. And I don't know if Wade Taylor will ever play a lick in the NBA, but is there not a tougher player in this conference or in college basketball than Wade Taylor? I mean, he just makes plays, man. I'm a fan of that kid. And yes, it is a unique draw for Auburn in this game. But that's the beauty of having a veteran team and a team that's been together for a while, because all Bruce has to do is point back to last year when A&M got the better of Auburn and say, do you remember how they took advantage? Because we're playing for more than this now. We're playing for pride. We're playing for, what's on the front of your chest as well as what's on your, on the back. And this is a game you guys need to be up for. If we're going to win a championship, you have to start showing consistency now, because that's what it's going to take in the tournament. It is showing up consistently for 6 straight nights. And let's start this making our own 6-game run to account for the SEC tournament.
Yeah.
So I think they'll be dialed in and ready to go. It is an opportunity for A&M. I expect them to be up for this, and they need it coming off of, is it 3 straight or 4 straight losses?
Four straight losses for Texas A&M. At Mississippi State, at home, Tennessee went into College Station and won. Vanderbilt turned around and went into College Station and won, and then they lost at Florida. So obviously, SEC, and they lost to good teams, but 4 in a row. They're in the tournament, all that. But at this point, they're just desperate to like get things back on track. And what better way to do that than to beat the best team, the number 1 team in college basketball?
I could not agree with you more. And Buzz knows that beating Auburn right now, that's a sea jump for him. That changes dynamics within the tournament. We just talked about the logistics of how difficult it is to win an NCAA tournament. Being in the best seed you can be makes a difference. And so they will sell out to win this game. They'll be up to win this game. I think Auburn will be up to the challenge. And I'll be interested to see how Janai, comes back after that. And then, like you talked about, the dynamics of the point guard position, Tahad was fantastic. Now he's got a little bit of a different cover in this game. I think I could expect him to start just because of Denver's injury. And given that I do anticipate he'll be limited if he does practice. But then you're right. Does JP get an opportunity here? Does he get to show his value and the reason that Auburn brought him to the table? Do they utilize Chad at point guard some to kind of offset, or let him be a de facto point forward somewhat? I think that's within his bag. It will be interesting to see. And then you talked about Miles also having the opportunity. He did that last year for Georgia Tech. I think that's within his range. But there's a lot here, and there's a lot at stake for Auburn. And like you talked about, this is a proud program. Bruce Pearl is the kind of guy that he doesn't go into games like, if we don't win this one, it's not a big deal. No, he hates to lose. He hates to lose probably more than he likes to win. And I think that's kind of cliche to say, but I think it's true of Bruce, if I'm being honest with you. So it will be interesting. It's a game that I think that they'll be ready to play. And then obviously, like you talked about, Iron Bowl of basketball right around the corner for a game that will mean a lot to Alabama, a game that's very talented offensively, and a game that means a lot to Auburn and a lot to Bruce. So a lot to look forward for, but a lot to be proud of on everything that you accomplished this past Saturday.
Yeah, and this team's had a really good approach. I mean, really quickly, you look at A&M. I mean, offensively, not great numbers. I mean, what's crazy is offensively, their adjusted efficiency is top 60 in the country. It's not great, but it's not horrific. But their shooting numbers are terrible. Yeah. I don't really know how. I mean, I guess they're the number 1 offensive rebounding team in the country from offensive rebounding rate. That's obviously, you look at Kentucky, got some boards offensively. That's where Auburn can lose this game if they don't lock down on defense, if Kelly doesn't crash the boards, if they get lazy on that end, and A&M will crash the boards all day.
Yeah.
And that's certainly what they do best. But I mean, their 3-point percentage is in the 300s. Their 2-point percentage is in the high 278. I mean, they shoot some low numbers shooting but now the defensively they're good. They're 12th defensive, their adjusted efficiency for defense is 12th in the country. So they're going to play pretty good defense. But offensively, they're just not a great shooting team. And so if Auburn has a good scout and approaches this with the same intensity that did Kentucky, they'll hold A&M in check. It's just going to be one of those grinded out games. I think trying to come back from Kentucky and then go, all right, now we got to go on the road and play a team that's going to be really physical and really tough. And can we come back and operate and grind through it? And on the, I think the more I think about it, if Denver Jones doesn't play, I would bet Pettiford plays 35, 36 minutes. I would bet the most you get from Pegues is a rotation. Just because I don't think Pegues has been in the mix very much the last 2 months in practice. It just is sort of like, I don't really, that's one of the mysteries, not just his inability to adjust to the SEC, but I've talked to enough people up there that like he's not even running rotations when they're preparing for games with either of the top 10 players he's not even really preparing for the game from an Auburn standpoint. And he's barely playing scout team on the other end. Like he's just like there. So I don't know what shape he's in, not shape physical. I don't know what like sort of where he's at.
Sure.
To prepare. I mean, he's a good player. He's played a lot of basketball. Maybe you prepare him for 2 days, you go out there and play. It's not like he's been staying super sharp necessarily. So I would be surprised if he gives you more than maybe a rotation a half. So maybe that gets to a full 8 minutes, but it could even be 6 minutes, something like that. I would think Jahad plays 35 minutes and he gives you a few something like that. It'll be the bare minimum. It ain't going to be like, oh, Bagese will come there and play 12, 13, 14. No, I highly, highly doubt that unless there's foul trouble. So,
yeah. And for Jahad to do that, he's going to have to stay out of foul trouble. That's the big thing in this game.
yeah.
And if Wade Taylor knows that, that's where it becomes interesting to me, because if he starts going at Jahad cannot foul, which means he's going to have to give way and he's going to have to get support at the rim from somebody.
Yeah, it's going to be it's a different challenge. It's going to be a different challenge. Every night in the SEC, it's a little bit different. It's all about matchups. This will be a physical battle. Auburn's had some close games. South Carolina, I thought, really took the fight to Auburn in Columbia, and it was close. And Florida took the fight to them. And Arkansas, I thought, really took the fight to Auburn, and it was competitive. And Georgia did. So, there have been some teams that have brought it. Auburn's come out on top most of the time, but there have been some teams that brought it, and it can be close. I think A&M will bring it, and they're going to be really, really desperate. I think it'd be really important for Auburn to get off to a good start with a team that's lost 4 in a row. If you can go in there and continue how you're playing and have a 10-point lead at halftime, whatever, it could be a little deflating for the crowd and stuff. You let them get up going and you get down by 10 or something happens in the first half where they're like, all right, we're back. We're going to, then you kind of get that going. If you can kind of go in there and just sort of keep them in a state of, kind of the malaise that they're in right now, losing 4 in a row, that would be good in terms of just letting them have momentum and crowd, and all that stuff. So,
yep.
All right. Well, we'll come back next week. We'll talk about A&M, and then we'll look ahead to the Alabama game that will still be huge, even though it won't have conference championship implications anymore because Auburn's got that locked up, but it'll still be a game that if you're Auburn is a game you want as much as you wanted the first game. You want to validate the first one. We'll talk about all that, but you do not want to do everything you did and then just lose the last one and split that season series with Alabama. It's your rival. You want to win that one. So we'll come back next week, talk about that. But again, unbelievable season Auburn's got going. Enjoy it. Enjoy some of these wins. Worry about the NCAA tournament here in a week or two when it gets here. But for now, just sort of savor and enjoy what this team's doing, and we'll worry about the NCAA tournament when it comes. All right, for Alan, I'm Justin. Go to auburnlive.com, subscribe, turn on notifications, and subscribe on YouTube. And we'll come back next week and wrap up the regular season, and we'll get ready for postseason. All right, see you guys.